Continuing on with this introduction to change mapping, our idea or our aim is to capture ideas, insights and information that we can use. We want to be able to keep track of where we are, hence change mapping. We're building a map of every part of the change. Now within this, each of those domains that we talked about, context, scope, plan, action, review, we're actually collecting and using different types of information at each of those stages. That's why they're separate. They've got different perspectives on how the whole thing works. So in context, what we're looking for all the time is big picture. We're looking for vision that holds everything together. We're actually going to use vision in action when we are completely lost and we don't know what's going on. It's to help us keep stable in the midst of deep uncertainty. So context helps us collect that information. It helps us find values that we're going to use to guide our scope, and it's going to find standards, laws and so on, and similar industry standards that we're going to use in planning. We're going to pick those up because whatever solution we're going to build, whatever we're going to work on, will need those standards, will need those visions. So even if we trim it right down to the smallest one, even down to the smallest level, we still need access to the information that we got in context. Now within context, so that's giving us, in context we're always looking upward to the big picture. When we get to scope, we're partitioning off a small bit of that big picture to work on. We're going to do a project on some part, but it's always connected back to the context that we started with. Here we're going to look at things like boundaries, we're going to look at things like skills, looking at stakeholders. We need to identify who does what. And one of the reasons we often describe this as a people area is because those choices are always made by people, whereas the big picture to a large extent is itself. We are choosing which bit we're going to work on. We're choosing the chunk that we're going to act on. So we set the scope, and the whole idea is to make sure that we don't wander too far from that scope. We know what we're going to do. In the plan, the next stage down, we're going to build instructions, we're going to look at the setup, we're going to look at the start and end conditions. That's the information we want to do. We need to deal with and identify and resolve as many uncertainties as we can before we get into the action. A colleague described this as a kind of bubble metaphor. We have to shrink the bubble in order to get through. And the skill level determines how big that space is going to be. The more skill someone has, the more uncertainty they're going to be able to do. But a raw trainee or a computer system is not going to be able to deal with much uncertainty at all. We've got to resolve any uncertainty during that plan period, which we will often do by looping through iteratively to resolve as many uncertainties as we can before we get into the action. We've also got the start and end conditions. One of the common traps is that people know when to start, but they don't know when to end, particularly if there's no obvious endpoint. So we need to identify what the signals are that tell us when to start, when to end. That's what we work on in the plan. Now, in the action, we're going to do the actions that are specified in the plan. But we're also going to have to do capture of information arising, because without that information we have nothing to learn from, nothing to build, nothing to renew, nothing to reassess. That information is absolutely crucial, and we need to set up how that information capture is going to be done and what we're going to capture in the plan phase, linked back to the scope, linked back to the context. Once the action is over, we need to do a review. We need to assess whether benefits realised. Again, benefits realised are going to be, the benefits to realise are going to be identified in the context, the scope and the plan. But the benefits realised in the action, we're going to need to check back against all of those phases to make sure that we did actually do what we claimed to do, what we intended to do. And if there's a variance, which is where the lessons learned comes in, if there's a variance, then look at the variance, look at what worked well as what didn't work well. Look for all of that information about what we need to change. And the distinction here between not just someone needs to change, but what will I do personally? What will we do as a team personally differently next time? What will we commit to learning to do differently next time? Well, so that we're ready for the next time round. So that's the information that we're capturing in context, scope, plan, action, review, regardless of scope, scale. content or context. It's always the same. The core principle is always the same in change mapping. Thanks for watching. Do look at the YouTube description for links to further detail. And don't forget to subscribe for other videos and also to support us on Patreon to help us produce these videos and the tools themselves.